Men's Forum wants you to master men's blueprint for life. Learn how to build wealth, build quality relationships with the right people, lead a better and healthier family life, live your full potential, inspire the world. Men were born to lead, keep, and protect the family. Join Men's Forum and master your blueprint for life. Men's Forum, all you need to become a better man.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen who are viewing this program from across the world. Today, as usual, we have an exceptional talent in studio, and his name is no other than Chris. Chris happens to be a dynamic personality. He is in the construction field, but along with being a leader in the construction field who has made a name for himself, he is also a life coach, a personal development coach. And his key focus is on working with men and working with the family. And today we will be talking about trauma. Stop trauma from stopping you, and how to overcome trauma and win in life. And Chris is also a rising star, has an author. One of the books that should be released later this year is Becoming a Better Man. And I want to assure you don't want to miss this type of information. You don't want to miss out on the information in this book, because it will literally give you a better perspective on life as a man and really point you in the right direction where you can significantly up-level your game and position yourself to be a great leader for yourself, for your family, in your community, and so much more. Chris, it's always a pleasure having you here. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, brother. How are you?
Phenomenal. I'm so excited to talk about, these issues, because I'm so caught up in the business world. Sometimes really pausing and really asking yourself, focusing on these issues like trauma, sometimes never really cross your mind. And then, your employees could be affected by trauma. And when they're affected by trauma, the thing about it, it affects how they perform in the organization. And so discussing these issues may seem divorced from business, but they are so interrelated. The first thing that I want us to look at, Chris, is trauma. What does trauma means to you?
So trauma, to be short and sweet about it, to me is a painful event, either physically or emotionally, puts you in a position where you are stuck and you can't let go of.
Interesting. And from research, what I've seen is that there are multiple types of trauma. Can you talk a little bit about the types of traumas that you believe affect people in life and hold them back, keep them stuck?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing is that it starts with us at a young age, right? And most of your trauma has become, at adolescence, and then because you never build those positive coping mechanisms on how to build with trauma, then you're in what I call that vicious cycle where the trauma just keeps repeating itself throughout your life, But there's multiple types of trauma. One is bullying, peer pressure, right? Like we've all dealt with that to some certain extent. Some of us a lot worse than others. There can be parental abuse, and that doesn't always mean physical. That can be emotional. That can be verbal. We come from a different era where men raise children different, and the way that my dad yelled at me and the way that he kind of led with an iron fist would be called child abuse nowadays, and there's obviously sexual trauma. There's tons of different trauma out there that as a child we deal with, and we have no coping mechanisms on how to deal with. So usually what happens is because we don't know how to let that go, then we hold on to it, and we get back to what we talked about before about having that backpack full of rocks. And a lot of times by the time you're an adult, you already have a bag full of rocks.
I was just doing some studies a little while back, and what I recognize is there's so many types of trauma. There are social psychologists and trauma coach like yourself who are in this field, and they talk about things like historical trauma, because they are looking at how a child might have been brought up, and because they have been brought up in a particular way and socialized in a particular way, they inflict that way of thinking and that socialization back on their offspring. So it becomes like generational, passed down from generation to generation. And that could be many things. That could be traumatized into thinking that you're born poor and you have to remain poor. It could be financial trauma. There's so many different layers
There is.
to trauma.
Yeah.
Would you care to talk a little bit about poverty as a
Yeah.
trauma? And how to break free from some of those things?
Oh yeah, without a doubt, it was huge in my own life, right? Because my mom was a choir director of a church. Part of why she worked there was because me and my brothers were allowed to go to that Christian school without paying the tuition, right? But because it was a private school, we went there with a bunch of rich kids.
Yeah.
You know? And so every time I went to a buddy's house to stay the night or whatever the case was, they all had the big houses with the pools and, you know, the super nice cars. And me and my brothers had none of that. You know, my dad was a middle-class construction worker. We didn't have that stuff, you know, and that creates its own trauma, right? You're already feeling unworthy. You're already feeling like you did something wrong because you're poor, right? You don't realize that, you know, you're born with the same opportunities as everybody else at that point. You already think that you're kind of, you know, behind the 8 ball, you know, and if you don't deal with that at a young age, I cannot tell you the amount of men that I know that are, you know, in their 40s and 50s and still have that unworthiness and that imposter syndrome and that codependency because of those little childhood traumas.
Chris, what you're talking about is so deep. I can recall many years ago, we were working a project titled Inspire the Child, Inspire Change Foundation. And we interface with young people, but we also interface with the adult. Interfacing with young people was the easiest thing to do because when you socialize them to think outside of the box and to think big, they consume that information very quickly and they believe and they go out into the world believing that they can conquer the world. And the ability to do great things in the world is possible. All right. So as a man thinketh, so is he. If you believe in it, you can manifest it. That was the easy part working with children. But working with adults, some of the encounter that we had was out of this world. I can recall interfacing with an elderly woman who had poverty trauma, financial trauma. And what she says to me is that she was born poor and she was destined to be poor. Hearing that was really hard for me to believe that someone can harbor the thought that there is no way out of poverty. That type of socialization and traumatic experience that they would have been through is kind of devastating.
It is.
I was saying to her, you know, you can change your circumstances, you can change your reality right here and right now. But you must believe that you can, because the man that believes he can make the change. And it's also true that the man that believes he is stuck simply because he believed it. The difference is that the man that believes he can, he's going to seek answers. So I said to her, if you believe you can, we're going to help you and we can help you. And one of the things that she was doing, she was producing pepper. She was bottling pepper. And I said to her, what if we are able to help you to source pepper at significantly lower prices? And what if we are able to help you to find distributors or buyers who's going to buy in bulk that can set the stage for you to earn perhaps $10,000 a day? 10,000. Well, that was out of the US, but in US dollars, we might want to say it's about $50 a day. All right. So what if I help you to earn $50 a day, $100 a day, $1,000 a day? What if? Because we can show you how to scale your brand up. And she was saying that's impossible because of that traumatic experience.
It is. It's the mindset, right? As children, how do we learn? We observe, right? And we see that our grandparents struggled and then our parents struggled and they never got out of that, right? So automatically we think, okay, well, that's going to be my life. I'm going to go get a job and make a mediocre paycheck. And that's the best I'm going to be able to do, right? Because it's what's around us. You know, the problem problem is that we're not teaching our children to believe in themselves. You nailed it right on the head, right? It's like we're teaching them, okay, get an education, get a job, save your money, buy a starter house, right? We're not teaching them to be Elon Musk, be the president of the United States. We all, when we were children, we had these dreams. I want to be a fireman. I want to be a baseball player. I want to be this. But then reality sets in by the time you're, an early adolescence, that those dreams are probably going to be unattainable because there's people already always telling you that only a certain few make that. Only a certain few are good enough for that. Right. So you should just settle. You should find a good job and you should settle. You should, find a wife and have children and settle for that life, which is fine. But we stop dreaming, and that's the worst thing you can do is tell a child to stop dreaming is the worst advice that you can possibly give them.
Chris, what I also love about your program and the program that we're doing, and I'll come back to the story shortly, is that you are really helping men, the family, to think outside of the box.
Yeah.
Traditionally is go to school, get a good education, and get a good job. But what we are doing, we are not stopping people at just a good job. We're going to be teaching them how to get out there, how to come together and build wealth for themselves, because financial trauma is real.
Yeah.
All right. Just coming back quickly to the story, Chris, I had to work on this lady. It was a lot of hard work. I said to her, right here in the audience, I know at least 5 restaurant owners. And part of managing a restaurant, they need pepper. They need pepper sauce. What if I'm to get each of these business owners to invest at least $100 in your pepper sauce? Immediately, you're generating $500. All right. What if we identify a few other persons that can do the same? Your $500 can become $5,000 per day. That $5,000 per day can become $10,000 per day, can become $20,000 per day. And here is where you're laying that foundation to shift your reality. But that requires a different type of socialization. And Chris, tell me about this. Do you think that sometimes it is necessary to really get people out of their social environment? Because this is what happens, Chris. I find this. They come out of their environment. They are socialized into a new way of thinking. But when they go back into that old environment, that old environment looks at them and say, who is you to think that you can be great? Who is you to think that you can embrace financial independence? You're born poor and you're going to die poor. And they go back into that socialization. Do you think that people can strive in that negative environment, or do you think sometimes they just need to step up?
No, I think that they're, I dealt with it in my own personal life, right? At 14 years old, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a musician and I wanted to be a rock star, right? And my mom fought it the whole way because she didn't believe in me. She didn't think I was capable of that. So then therefore, what was I going to think? That I wasn't capable of it either, right? Because that's the environment that I was in. No, you need to stay in school. You need to get a good job. You need to do this, the safe. Right. And then when I did try the music world, I was already damned to fail because I went into it not believing in myself. And that's what we're doing to our children, right? Don't get me wrong, education is super important and all those things are important. But the one main thing that I try to do with my son now is try to get him to truly believe that he is capable of anything. And a lot of us are not, we're not raised in that environment.
You're correct. You're perfectly correct. And I do believe, Chris, that there's some socialization directly or indirectly, intentionally and sometimes unintentionally, is designed to socialize people to a life long of trauma. And I'm going to give some practical example of what I'm saying. You see, back in the days, going to school, getting a good education, getting a good job was enough. It was enough. Today, with inflation and a lot of social changes that has taken place, social and economic changes that has taken place, it is not enough. You find that a single source of income is not enough to carry the family.
close. Yeah.
So if families are stick to go to school, get the good education, get the good job, it's not going to work, and that's going to open up, the floodgates of trauma, financial trauma, and all different types of trauma for that family.
Yeah, because once you start struggling, then that trauma starts taking place, and then you hold on to that trauma, and then more trauma, right? And that's how you end up with that backpack full of rocks. I read something a while ago, I think I shared with you privately, is I read an article that said if your parents made 50 grand a year in the 80s, you have to make 160 grand a year now to live the same lifestyle.
Exactly.
And there are people that have two incomes, and they're together not making 160 a year,
Exactly. Chris, what I want to point to now is the Family Forum. And one of the reasons we have designed the Family Forum is to really help families, men, first of all, who's the head of the home, and families to really understand how to come together as a team, how to work together as a team, how to grow together in love and harmony as a team, how to build wealth together, a team. Why? Because, Chris, you have done the research, you have done the studies, you have done the teaching, and everything that we talked about here is not imagination. You lived it, and you're breaking away from it. But we know so many other persons in life today who are struggling as a family. Even with two income coming into the family, they're still struggling because they don't have the blueprint that is well structured, well developed, and well applied into their lives to really help them to get past financial trauma. And Chris, tell me this though, from your experience and knowledge, do you think that the lack of finance can open up a floodgates of a whole host of other traumas that's being opened up to you?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I've seen finances destroy more marriages than anything else, and literally I dealt with it within my own, my wife and I didn't know how to grow wealth when we were young. We had no clue, and I struggled for a lot of years because of that. If we would have learned how to grow wealth in our 20s, then we would probably both be retired by now. We're both in our 50s. But we don't learn how to grow wealth at that age because we're not groomed that way. In our generation, we were groomed. Okay, well, you get a wife and you buy a little house and you save your pennies. And then if you're lucky, maybe you pay that house off and you can go buy a nicer house. And you know what I mean? That's how we're raised, right? We weren't raised at 20 years old. Okay, get a Roth IRA or, start an IUL or, any kind of investment strategy at all. We weren't taught any of that. If we were, then, like I said, the financial stress of a family destroys relationships more than anything else. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, that stress alone will drive you insane. And how can you be in a functional relationship, an intimate relationship, when every day it's financial stress?
Exactly. And Chris, again, what I love about the Men's Forum is designed to really give men and the family a blueprint that will really enable them to get off of that paycheck to paycheck cycle. Chris, you talk about you went through these challenges. Many years ago, many moons ago, I went through some of those same challenges, and we had to figure things out. All right. I could recall the days I cannot recall working one job. I was working at a bank, and from the bank, I had my car. I would go hustle with the car, to generate additional income. I then left the bank. I set up my own business. I work consultancy. I develop a call center. When I finish with my consultancy, I go on across to the call center to provide support to my staff. And even at that time, because you're now building your family, you had sometimes the expenses was exceeding the income. So you really had to sit down and ask yourself, what is the best use of your time? And fortunately, I began to do my studies, do my research, and a whole lot was revealed in terms of how to position yourself to build wealth. And one of the things that really stood out is that wealthy people put money to work for them.
Mhm.
The average person,
Yeah.
you work for money.
Yeah.
No, there's no harm in working for money. I
Mhm.
work for money until today, and I love working for money
Yeah.
because I love what I do.
Mhm.
But it gives you that sense of security when you know you can fall asleep and not worry about money. You can
Oh,
go
yeah.
to Timbuktu and
Mhm.
not worry about money. You can take an all-inclusive family tour
Mhm.
and not worry about money. And that is why we have designed the
Mhm.
Men's Forum, Family Forum,
Mhm.
is to give families a different perspective on life, because the going to school, get a good education, get a good job is not enough.
Not even
We're
close.
now It's
No.
not enough, it's not close. So we are now saying to them, you work to earn, you earn to save, you save to
Mhm.
invest, and you invest to build wealth. And we're going to show you how to position
Yeah.
yourself to
Yeah.
build wealth. Chris, it's always I want to, I can't say how much is a joy connecting with you,
Mhm.
Chris. You have so much of experience with everything that we talked about, trauma,
Mhm.
and you have hit rock bottom, and I mean literally hit rock
Mhm.
bottom.
Mhm.
But what I love about you is your resilience.
Mhm.
You bounce back right up and you begin to fight the fight.
Mhm.
You begin to fight the fight. Now you have fought the fight. You have win the fight. You're still fighting, but you have
Oh,
won a
yeah.
whole lot of it.
Yeah.
You have now packaged that experience, that knowledge, and you have built up a master's degree along this area
Mhm.
where you're now giving back to your community. You're giving to men and you're giving to
Yeah.
society.
Mhm.
How it feels to give back, coming through all of that and now being able to give back. How does it feel to be able to do that? Does it?
It's the most rewarding, right? It's the most fulfilling. The thing is like you said, peace is the main goal in life, right? And once you can get past the money struggle of living paycheck to paycheck, you do find some peace, right? But I believe that a sense of purpose is what gives you the ultimate fulfillment, the ultimate peace of mind. And I finally found mine. It was, to be the voice, to be the face of this movement, because I truly believe that we can make generational transformations if we can just start this process younger. You don't have to, like you said, you don't got to hit rock bottom and wait till you're in your 40s to get it together, to learn to be better. There is not a successful person out there that hasn't fallen flat on their face. It's part of it, right? But that doesn't mean you have to do it for 2 decades. The thing is that if we can get the blueprint out there, the research out there, the action steps out there for men to start becoming better people at a younger age, then they won't struggle so long. And then eventually that generational transformation will happen, right? Because if he's learning how to be a better person younger, then he's going to be in a better situation to teach his children when they're young. And
Yeah,
eventually everybody will have a blueprint and a set of action steps to overcome these traumas, right? Like I said, the biggest thing is we all deal with different stuff, and we've only scratched the surface on the types of trauma. There are thousands of them. But the
exactly.
thing is we, as young people, we don't have the proper,
The coping mechanism.
coping mechanisms. Yeah, thank you. Is to deal with those things, and so we struggle for years and years and years. And I was told once by a mentor of mine that once you experience that trauma and you don't let it go, you are stuck
Mm-hmm.
until you
Mm-hmm.
let go of that trauma, right?
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, I was a 14-year-old kid walking around in a 40-year-old body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can change that process even a
Yeah.
little bit, then it can start to impact, because we all know that God works through people. If we teach this guy and then he teaches his buddy and then his buddy teaches his son or his nephew or his cousin, then eventually this will blossom into where everybody will have a blueprint.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the objective behind what we are doing with the Men's Forum
Mhm.
and the Family Forum. But Chris, I want to say something because you said something early on. You talk about young people and coping mechanism. I think
Mhm.
even some adults don't have that coping mechanism.
Mhm.
Even in celebrity lifestyle,
Oh,
we
without
see
a
that
doubt.
they go through a different
Most of them are
type
the
of,
worst. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like they got the money side figured out, but we both know that that's only a small portion of being happy and being successful is the money side.
yeah. We see many of them turn to a life of drugs.
Yeah.
And once they become addicted to it,
Mhm.
something else takes
Yeah.
over. They are in pain. We see
Mhm.
many of them commit suicide,
Yeah.
because of whatever trauma they're going through.
Mhm.
And again, this type of platform, I love it because it really helps people to connect with purpose. And I do believe that connecting with purpose is an essential anchor point for every human being
Yeah.
to be in that place where you can feel as though you are living from purpose. And I want to say something else on trauma quickly, Chris. You spoke early on about the coping mechanism. And what I want to say to young men and across the world is that life is not meant to be easy. In life, you're going to go through a whole host of things.
Mhm.
You think about a baby trying to walk, that baby is going to fall a few times, and then
Mhm.
that baby will not give up.
Mhm.
They will keep fighting until they can walk and make a few steps, until they can run,
Mhm.
and until they feel they can fly.
Mhm.
You think that the few falls wasn't traumatic to those baby? It was, but they had that spirit of resisting that trauma and growing beyond that trauma.
Mhm.
And in life, just as you attempt to do things in your life, you're going to have some bumps and falls and bruises. And I want to say to you, get accustomed to it.
I
It's a
agree.
part of life. All right. I was looking at Dr. Phil recently, and he speak to this issue directly. A lot of young people and people, they just don't know how to deal with pain.
Mhm.
And when they experience it, they say, why me? And what
Yeah.
I've learned about these things,
Mhm.
Chris, is that because all of us, we
Yeah.
went through some form of trauma, all of us.
Mhm.
What I've learned is that it does two things to you. It builds you, or three things. It builds you,
Mhm.
it keeps you stuck,
Mhm.
or it breaks you.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And you got to make a choice that you're going to allow your experiences to be building blocks
Yeah.
and not blocks to keep you stuck. And let me conclude what I'm saying here by just talking about a quick story. Joel Osteen, who is a famous
Mhm.
minister, pastor, I could recall listening to him, and he spoke about a pretty interesting story. He was going to buy his first property, and everything that can go wrong went wrong. And he was asking himself, why me? I'm a man of God.
Mhm.
Why do I have to go through this? Why do I have to experience this type of unnecessary trauma?
Mhm.
So he was rowing with his creator why that happened. But through it all, he was making connection with people that he need to make connection with, and he wasn't even aware of it. He
Mhm.
was building healthy relationship with, people from City Hall, people, governors, and all of these people because he was having difficulties. He could have given up and said, I'm gonna push this down, I'm gonna give up on that.
Mhm.
But he learned. He went through it. He put his shoulder to the wall, and he learned from it. And a few years later, he was going to buy the stadium where he has one of the biggest church in the world. And guess what? The same scenario had played out. And this time, he was saying to himself, "Thank God, what happened to me in the past happened."
Yeah.
Because he has built relationship with the right people, and all he had to do is to get on the phone and make a call and say, I'm going to make a purchase, and this is what happened.
No.
And those persons were able to say, okay, we're going to fix that.
Yeah.
One, two, three.
Yeah.
And he was able to acquire that building. So it's perspective, because it's perspective too, Chris. How do you find this? I mean, sometimes it's just you're socialized to think in a particular way.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this, Chris. Some people have a fixed mindset
Mhm.
that might be holding them back instead of
Mhm.
that growth mindset. Would you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, for sure. And for me, it starts like much younger, right? Like, perfect example, when you're trying to learn to ride a bike, it's inevitable that you're going to crash that bike a couple
Yeah.
times while you're learning to ride, right? Well, there are two types of people. There's that type of person, when you fall down and it hurts, you create that fear. I don't want to do that again because it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then there's another type, the growth mindset, that says, yeah, that hurt a little bit, but I want to learn how to ride this bike so bad that I can take that pain and keep trying. Right.
Yeah.
And that develops into adulthood. Yes, there's pain. I had to realize in my own life, I spent so many years, why me, God? Like, why the addiction? Why this? Why the divorce? Why all the things that I went through? right? And then I realized when I met my first mentor, it's kind of like the Joel Osteen thing. I was supposed to go through all of that to find my purpose and become who I was, right? The problem was is I spent a ton of years in fear. I was so afraid of becoming who I was supposed to be because I didn't think I was good enough to be that.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Right.
That is deep.
Yeah, and there are so many people out there, men, women, everywhere, right? Like you were put on this planet for a purpose, but you are so afraid of trying to be that you block it from existence, right? The fear of failure has stopped more success than anything else on the planet.
Yeah. Chris, what you're saying there is deep. Your fear of becoming who you know you were born to become. Chris, what I find happen a lot in these cases, Chris, is very often I find society beats you down when you say, I want to be great. I want to be significant in life. Society itself beats you down. And very often what I see, Chris, is that many persons take the beat down.
They do.
Society say, who is you?
Yeah.
To think that you're important, you're better than me.
Yeah.
And you take the beating down. And Chris, what I've learned based on what you're saying, the great vision that you have is based on your uniqueness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And remember the word I use, uniqueness. So you're so unique. The person that is standing next to you or the person that's talking to you don't have your uniqueness. So very often, guess what? They will never see your gifting. They will never see your calling. They will never see your potential.
Right.
So guess what? Because they are not also seeing it in themselves, because it's unique to you.
And you know, it's the beauty of Earth, right? Like if everybody looked the same and all the cars look the same and all the houses look the same, think about how boring that would be. No two people are alike. We all have different destinies. We all have uniqueness. We all have special abilities. The problem is like I was saying earlier, when I tried to start a music career, my mom drilled into me that it wasn't safe, so I shouldn't try.
Yeah.
So we are groomed to not become who we are.
Yeah.
Because of fear. Oh, you can't do that. What makes you think you're special? Who said that you were going to grow up to be a public speaker and a life coach? Right? Like you better go get a job and start a 401k. You know how hard it is to make it in the life coaching business. You know how hard it is to be a public speaker. Like if you listen to all that, then you will never try anything.
Yeah.
Right?
The thing about Chris, the thing about that, what you're saying there too, is that sometimes it's the people that know you and love you and care for you are the ones who are saying this to you. And what I've learned, Chris, they're not saying it to you out of hate and out of vexation. They're saying it out of fear, but they're saying it based on their limited belief. They're saying it based on their socialization to life.
Yeah, my mom loved me, right? There's no doubt my mom loved me. She was trying to protect me. And the only way she knew how was to save me from the trauma that she had experienced in her own life. But what she did was try to tell me not to try so that I didn't fail.
Yeah.
You can't fail. You can't fail if you don't try. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And that experience that you had is not unique to you, Chris. My mom, my dad, middle class family, but what they know about is going to work, and earning and going to work and earning and, going to school, get a good job. And work. And I could recall when I said to my mom, I said, Mom, I want to be my own boss. She says to me, stop being funny.
Yeah.
Stop being funny.
She thought it was out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah. And starting it, was an experience. Building it up was an experience. She was always there. She's there. But when it became to that point where she was seeing physical manifestation of the hard work, she would say, my God, this is powerful, and because she's now the beneficiaries of some of the doubts that she had. Doubts. Yeah. The point I'm making here, Chris, is that you have to own your sense of self. You have to own your purpose, regardless of the negative views that you're getting. What is important is, Chris, is to have the mentor, the coach, the sponsor, the supportive community to help to push you forward. And Chris, what I love about the Men's Forum is that this institution is built out to give men that community so they never feel alone. They have the community that say, I believe in you. And Chris, let me go one step further. In the Men's Forum and in Families Forum, while I know you're going to be doing a lot of work, Chris, to mentor and coach and give them the blueprint to position themselves for greatness, Chris, this is more than the teaching. If there is a man, a member of a family that needs access to capital to grow their vision, guess what, Chris? We're going to give them.
Yeah, exactly.
We have access to a bigger community that's going to help them to get access to capital to start and go after their vision. And guess what else, Chris? We're going to give them the mentorship. We're going to teach them how to build wealth, and we're going to work with them on this journey. You know, Chris, what I love about our connection is that it's really about helping people to open their eyes to the fact they have unlimited potential to be great. And it begins with your belief in yourself. You have to believe that you were born to do great things. You have to know it. And more importantly is to surround yourself with people that believe in you. And that's what the Men's Forum does. That's what the Family Forum does. Chris, as we begin to wrap up, can you talk to me about some practical steps, some practical solutions that men can take, family can take to overcome trauma?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think the biggest thing is trauma is fear. And that was one of the biggest things that I had to learn once I started my personal development is everything is fear-based. I have not worked with one man on a personal one-to-one basis. Really inside, he wasn't a scared little boy, right? Because I was at one point that scared. I was a 42-year-old man walking around a scared little boy, right?
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing that you can do right now is start believing in yourself. You know, my biggest mentor told me that, you know what your biggest problem is? And I was like, what? I got a ton of them. He's like, no, you got one. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, you don't believe in yourself. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, how can you expect anybody else to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself? You carry all that negativity around you, and that's what you exude. So that's what your environment is. And then you complain about your environment. We are our own worst enemy most of the time. We create a lot of our own trauma because of our fears and insecurities and those types of things, right? We just do that vicious circle over and over and over again. The first action step that I will tell you.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Right. First action step I will tell any man that I work with, get some help, start believing in yourself. You have no idea how that one aspect of your life will completely change your life.
Oh my, Chris, what you're saying has so much of depth to it. It has so many different levels of depths to it, you know. And I just want to relate to some of what you said. I can recall many years ago when I attempted to buy my first property. A good friend of mine came to me, said, Gary, hey, there is this property for sale. And because, you know, I was looking for property, and he said, this is the one that I think you should buy. So we went up, we looked at it, and I said, hey, I love what I'm seeing here for the development that I can do with this. So I went and we started to negotiate with the seller. We put down the deposit on that property. But guess what, Chris? After I put down that money, an issue came up with the property. And I had to sit and wait almost for an entire year with my money tied up. That property. And the way that I move, Chris, is that any obstacle that comes in front of me, I don't allow it to stand. I try to hit it down. So I was dealing with my lawyer. My lawyer was dealing with the obstacles. And I decided, hey, listen, I'm going to go ahead and deal with their lawyer too. I got to get this obstacle out of the way. But that process took almost a year to complete. And on two occasions, I called the guy. I said, listen, I don't want my money here anymore. get me back my money, pay me back my money.
Mhm.
And I'm happy that wisdom prevailed. And because I decided to start to negotiate with everyone, I negotiate with the problem. We had to pay some extra monies, but we paid it and we get them out because one, I did the evaluation, and even at the price that we were buying at, it had equity. Lots of equity. I went ahead with that deal. But the point I want to make here, Chris, after that deal, I was so shaken up that I said, I'm not going to do this again.
Yeah, I'm never going to do this again. Yeah.
I'm not going to do this again.
Yeah.
And that would have been the big.
Yeah, even though you made money, it was
Yeah.
so traumatic that you're like, oh man, I'm not doing that again. That's too stressful. Well, you know what? That's what success is. It's going the extra mile. It's doing whatever it takes, right?
Yeah.
It's about taking risk. It's about the opposite of being safe. But
Exactly.
in order to be willing to do any of that, you got to look in the mirror and say exactly what you said. I know that I'm going to crush this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I walked around for almost 4 decades not being able to say that in the mirror. And there are millions of people out there that do the same thing. Ooh,
I like that.
I would really like to start my own business, or I would like to go get my real estate license, or I would like to do this. No, because if I fail, I'm going to lose all my money. I better just keep this job and just keep putting money into 401k. And, and maybe by the time I'm 65, I won't be living on Social Security, and you're not going to be successful that way. You're going to get by. There's a whole bunch of people that get by. But like we've talked about before, there are tons of people in this world that want to change their life. There are very few that are willing to do the work that it takes to change their life.
But what you're saying there is important. Willing to do the work to change your reality. And that's why I like this topic, stop trauma from stopping you.
Yeah.
Because that's what we did,
It's what it does, right? It's literally what it does is you have a trauma and then you don't conquer it and let it go. Therefore, that trauma sticks with you. And it's like a dryer sheet. It just clings to everything. And more trauma clings to it. And then you're walking around with this whole basket case full of trauma and you don't know how to live.
Exactly. But let me say, what I did to break that trauma, because, it's not easy to have thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars tied up into a real estate project and knowing that, hey, everything can go wrong. All right. To break that fear that I had to continue the process, I began to do research and I began to ask myself, what can go wrong that I can anticipate? What can go wrong that I cannot anticipate? And what cushion effect can I have for this? Because real estate ownership, real estate investment is one of the fastest way to build wealth when you know what you're doing. So I digged in and I get the information. So I didn't have fear of the unknown preventing me from breaking through that traumatic experience that I had with the first property. I dig into information, and what I did 6 months later, I was looking at the estate and I said, okay, let's take this a few feet off the ground and put something else at the bottom and turn it into an income producing asset. I looked at the back. I said, okay, we have space. Let us develop the back and take this a few stories up in the air and create a multifamily unit. If I had allowed fear to prevent me, that first traumatic experience to prevent me from taking this leap at life, I would have been stuck on what I call that paycheck to paycheck cycle. So, Chris, I do believe that these stories and these experiences that we have and sharing these with people and giving them the best practices, they don't have to go through those trauma. They don't have to go through it alone because they have mentors, they have coaches, they have people who have been there and done this multiple times. That really help them to navigate life itself. So, Chris, again, I want to give you tremendous kudos for being the brain behind your vision. Today we have Men's Forum, we have Family Forum. You have the new book that is going to be out this year, Becoming a Better Man. And I do believe that this gives both of us an opportunity to live from purpose, because it's all about serving humanity. And I want to say, in spite of all the fights that you're going to embrace in life, you're going to face in life, you have been a shining example of standing up to the storm, navigating the storm, and embracing life and winning at life. So I want to give you that tap on the back.
Yeah.
For that great work that you have been doing.
Thank you.
And with that, I want to give you the last words to speak to your audience.
Yeah.
Based on what we're doing here.
Yeah, this topic obviously hits really close to home to me because, tons of trauma in my life. And what I realized is that the main conqueror of trauma is gratitude. And what I mean by that is, you just mentioned it, helping others, right? It is very hard to be depressed. It's very hard to be full of fear. It's very hard to be full of anxiety and stress when you are helping another person. So we can just learn to be grateful for the life we have, and that comes by helping people less fortunate than us, right? There's nothing better to make you grateful than to see somebody in a worse position than you are. It instantly makes you grateful for what you got. And the key to all of this is that when I help people, it helps me. Every time that I help somebody, I become a better man. It's not, it's not like I'm just, and I read books, obviously. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly doing my own personal development, but nothing helps me become better more than helping somebody else.
Brilliant. Chris, that is so deep. And again, I love this platform because things that I know that we will talk about is how to be more compassionate souls. All right. I think that sometimes you tend to feel that the world has grown distant from loving and caring and for each other.
And it can be the simplest thing, right? Like, how you hold the door for somebody and they don't say thank you? Yeah. And you're like, oh, that was kind of rude. I held the door for them and they didn't even say thank you. But when they do say thank you, you know that joy you get because you just helped somebody and they reciprocated that kindness. That's love right there. That's love in a nutshell. It is being selfless and getting outside of yourself to help another human being.
Exactly.
Once you understand that all of that is the conqueror of trauma, then you start to understand what real life is about.
Yeah.
Conquering trauma is being selfless and getting outside of yourself.
I love it. All right, audience across the world, I want to say to you, come, don't be strangers. We have the Men's Forum, and the Men's Forum is designed for men. We're going to help you to master your sense of self, master your sense of purpose, and master your direction in life, and so much more. We will talk to you about processes, best practices in terms of building wealth. So you don't have to do the paycheck to paycheck. You don't have to put your family through trauma because you have limited cash flow potential. I want you to also join us as we talk about the Family Forum. This is for family. All right. So come with your spouse and come with your mom, your dad, your kids, come with the family. And in this platform, we will teach you how to break the cycle of poverty faster because you will learn things like group economics and how to leverage group economics to position yourself to build wealth. Now, what I want you to do to join this community, I want you to go to the description of this video and I want you to look in the description. You will see the link. Press that link. Get registered. Registration right now is free and become part of this movement, part of this community. You're going to get mentorship and coaching and support, all types of support. You may be a male and want to start a business and you don't know where the capital is going to come from. We're going to help you with that. Get registered today. Chris, thanks again for being here.
Yeah, no problem, man.
We do this again next week.
Oh, yeah.
Family Forum. For a new generation of people, learn smart ways to build individual and generational wealth, live and lead more purpose-driven lives, build and leverage community leadership, build strong personal and corporate brands, take personal and collective ownership of family life. Family Forum for a new generation of families.